Welcome to the Bell Cow Author Roundup podcast, where we celebrate Minnesota's incredible fiction authors and the stories that make our literary scene so vibrant. I'm Rob Jung.
And I'm Michael MacBride. Together, we're the team behind Bell Cow Productions and the Bell Cow Catalog, a digital catalog designed to connect Minnesota authors with readers, libraries, and indie bookstores.
The catalog will be heading to all 377 Minnesota libraries, 80 plus indie bookstores, plus those in border cities such as Sioux Falls, Fargo, Superior, and La Crosse.
And now with this podcast, we get to bring those amazing voices to life. Every episode features one of our herd members talking about their books, their writing journey, and the stories behind the stories.
And before we start, let us apologize for all the cow-related puns you're about to hear.
All right, let's dig in. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Colleen Baldrica. Thank you so much for joining us, author of Tree Spirited Woman. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I'm looking forward to this, so thank you.
So, Colleen, tell us a little bit about yourself. Before the book.
Before the book, I'm going to go back a number of years. Okay, let's just say my grandmother was my significant person in my life, and she lived with us, and she died October of my senior year before I was going to, as I started school, and I was 17. So I start my 17 year, and I start my 17 year, start senior year, I'm 17, I lose my virginity, I get pregnant, I get married, I graduate high school, I have a baby, I turn 18. Then I fast forward a number of years, 4 years, 5 years, and my husband decided he doesn't want to be married. The first time he left was when my second child was 6 weeks old. He came back for a while and then he left again. And now I find myself a single person. I had to learn to like who I am. I had to learn to, who am I? What am I? What am I doing? My grandmother was my significant role model in my life. My mother was not. She was not a positive person. I came to cherish her, but she was not a positive person in my life. She, I was dumb, I was stupid, I wasn't this, I wasn't that. It doesn't matter, but I married mom first time. I know that now. But now I'm skipping just a little ahead. It was about almost 3 years after my husband left. I realized he wasn't coming back. I remember walking in the woods one day and realizing I'm not a bad person. And I really got to the point where I thought, I like who I am. I'm not bad. I'm not what I've heard from my mom or my ex and, there. And I remember mentioning it to my dad, who was pretty positive, but he goes, Colleen, don't tell anybody because people think you're conceited. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Dad, for the first time, I remember I'm not a bad person. And then I decided I was going to start. I thought, I'm poor, I have nothing, I'm going to go to college. Now I'm 27 years old, 9 years out of high school. I have 2 young children. I go to my high school and get my transcripts, and he goes, you graduated on the bottom fourth of your class. And I thought, well, yeah, probably. I mean, why try? Because my mother already told me I wasn't smart enough. I couldn't do it. And I never tried because I might prove her right. So all of a sudden I decided I'm going to do this. And he looked at me and says, you probably will just do fine. And I will. I got an A, a B, and a C. Success breeds success. And I did that. So now I'm going to get to my second quarter of college. I meet a Lakota medicine man, and his name was Charlie. And that's just for that part. But I'm also at this point struggling about my life, my faith, every aspect of who I am, being a mom. I don't even know how to be a mom. And what am I doing wrong? I'm crying. I'm out in the woods by the college. I'm praying. I'm crying. And I'm saying, what do I do? Do I follow this way in faith? Do I go this way? What do I do? And all of a sudden I'm stopped. And this big old oak. And I could feel the life force. I could feel the life force of the tree going. It's like I remember thinking, it's like blood running through my veins, but I could feel it. And I'm out there and my questions were answered. It was like, okay, my questions on faith. Um, can I be real honest? I mean, but it was like, I am one God. People worship me differently. I sent, this Jesus because they could understand the loss of a child. I sent data, and it answered my questions, but it also told me to lift up my branches, to let go, to trust. I remember all this garbage being pulled right from me. My fingers were just like gnarled, and that I would never be alone. I'm not alone, and I had to let go, and I had to trust. And I'm out there, you're at your vulnerable state and you're crying and you're doing all of that. And now I go back into the school and I honestly believe I would have glowed in the dark. I felt so at peace.
It sounds like it. Jeez.
Oh, and I walk in and the first person I see is Charlie. And he was a Lakota medicine man. I said, Charlie, this is what has happened. And he said, Colleen, that is so powerful. I'm giving you the name. And he said it in Lakota, and it meant tree spirited woman.
Uh,
And that was what it was then. But about 2 years later, I had this dream that I had to write this book. It would be called Tree Spirited Woman. It would be a cross between the style of Siddhartha and the prophet. It would all take place in the woods. It would be a young woman and an older woman, but I had to grow into it. And I wasn't a writer. I mean, heaven's sakes, I just started college. Now remember, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was going to be my first, I'm going to get a 2-year degree. I'm going to be a juvenile probation officer. And after my first year, I decided I can go further. But I remember the English teacher saying, you write really creatively, but you're not talking about you have run-on sentences. And I'm thinking, okay, what the hell's a run-on sentence? I
yeah.
didn't know. So I don't consider myself a writer, but I knew I had to do this. And it was, the dream occurred a number of times. And it, all right, I am a member of White Earth. My grandmother lived with me. She was French Canadian and Native American. And so my grandmother was my significant person. But in the Native culture, if you have this dream that keeps recurring and recurring, you really need to listen. It is you can call them guardian angels, you can call them your ancestors, they are telling you a message. Listen, hear it. All of a sudden you'll get this, you have to do this, and you'll think about it. And if you let it go, somebody else is going to take it over. But I had this and I knew I had to do it. So it's about, I want to say 13 years later, I finally started writing. And I started working on it. And a friend of mine said, this group I would go to breakfast with, I was telling them about it. And she goes, well, you are going to say, and you are going to write about, and you are going to do. And I literally got almost sick because it had to be what it was supposed to be. Because as a writer, when the words come, it's almost like a voice telling you, and you have to hear it, you have to listen. And
Yeah.
the words come, and you don't even know where they're coming from, but the story is there. And there's a lot of, in my book, it is a work of fiction, but a lot of my life. And every chapter has something. And I started it and it took 8 years to finish, and people would, and when you see my book, it's like, yay big. Um, but it is what it was supposed to be. And I really believe that. And I listened, and the little book is, I'm not supposed to call it a little book according to my author friends. My book has won and done very well. But I believe it was a gift, and that is why it has done so well. And I really didn't tell anybody I was writing a book. And so when I finally decided I'm going to publish, and I sent it out to one author, and they said, "Oh, one um, publishing place," and they went, "Oh, but we're not doing memoirs." And I'm thinking, but it's not a memoir, but it reads maybe as such. Um, and then when I had it edited, I realized I was missing a chapter because editing is a big thing. So my book, that's kind of my story as to where it came. But I'm very fortunate. I probably have talked too much, right?
I wouldn't say that. It's very interesting, and you're
No,
right. I mean,
no,
a book is as long as it needs to be. It's hard to pinpoint exactly how long something should be, but when you reach that point, you know it's done. And like you
Well,
said, you had a fully formed vision of what it should be from the
I
start.
had
It
a
sounds
vision
like
of
so.
the size. I had a vision of the style. I had the vision of what it was. I mean, it is a book that is small. It is there. I wanted it to be non-threatening for a non-reader. I had all these things in my head, but it took 8 years. So when I tell people it took 8 years from this big, from start to finish, they go, but life happens. I got other degrees. I, did other things, but all of a sudden I could think of something, and in the middle of the night I'd wake up and I'd have to write. You don't know when the voice would come. And for the longest time, I remember doing book events, and a friend of mine said, "For God's sake, Colleen, own your book. You wrote it." Because I'd always say, "It was a gift." No, you did it. And it was kind of hard for me. It's still the old junk, but I wrote it, and it's done.
Is there a little bit of it that you'd care to read to us?
Oh, yeah. What would you? Okay. I'm just going to tell you, it's this big, this big. It
Mhm.
The chapters are short. They're like 3, 4 pages, and it is circular because everything in the native language is circular. There's a beginning, there's an ending. So it starts the prologue, but then it's the beginning and it ends with the ending. And all of the chapters in between are the life. It is like everything that lives dies, and in between is our living. And that is what the book is. And it takes place over a 12-month period, all in the woods. It is a young woman who comes across an older woman. And I am going to toss this out to you because you guys get to decide. The chapters are the beginning, chapter on listening, prayer, truth, relationships, marriage, children, menopause. But men is not menopause. Why do men think it's not for them? It's men and pause. It's for all of us. Anyways, age, death, trust, joy, and the ending. What chapter made you think?
In light of the world situation, I would like to hear the one on truth.
Okay, I'm going to read you that one. The chapters are short. So it's my style of writing. You can keep it simple. You don't have to write more words, aren't going to tell your whole story. Keep it simple. Nobody wants to read a whole abundance of, the litany of every aspect of whatever. You want to tell your story, but you want to keep it simple. That is my belief. True. On the 28th of December, it snowed about 6 inches. As I was putting on my long underwear, I began to question whether or not Tree-Spirited Woman would show up for our meeting. I considered, I considered skipping our standing appointment. I didn't want to go wandering in the woods on a day like this. It was cold, it was wet. Still, I knew if I didn't go and she showed up, I would feel I let her down. Trudging through the woods, dressed in double layers, I started to get warm. I'd been walking about a mile and still saw no sign of Tree-Spirited Woman. I decided I'd walk another 10 minutes before starting back to my car. I was ready to go back when I spotted her. She had spread out a blue tarp, the kind you might put under a tent. She was sitting on it, sipping steaming things from a large cup. A thermos, along with an extra cup, was on the tarp beside her. She looked up and she said, "Oh, it's good to see you. Come and have a cup of cider with me as we talk." As I sat down next to her, I filled my cup, and she continued, "You have the look of someone who has a question to ask." Tree-spirited woman smiled at me waiting for me to begin. I have had many people tell me things that they say are true. Yet when I talk to someone else, I hear a different story. Can you tell me how I will know who's telling the truth? I asked. Tree-spirited woman looked at me with a sparkle in her eye and started to laugh. What you said is true. People see situations differently and often argue about what is true. What people do not understand is what they see or believe is their truth. I would like you to stand next to me and right next to that birch tree near that large limb. I stood and I walked just where she pointed. I couldn't see Tree-spirited woman from where I was. The tree was blocking her. "Now look closely at the tree and tell me exactly what you see," she directed. Well, there's a small patch on the birch tree that looks like someone has written on it. There is also a dead branch hanging down, resting against the trunk of the tree, and it looks like a deer may have eaten some of its bark. Looking at the tree, she said to me, "Well, that's not my tree you're describing, for there is nothing that looks like writing anywhere on my tree, and it has no dead branches hanging down." "Wait a minute. Are you describing that birch tree there?" I said, moving where she could see me and pointing directly at the tree. "Yes, that is the one I see, and that is the one I am describing. There is writing or something that looks like writing on it, and it's a dead branch hanging down along the side," I insisted. "Huh, you are mistaken," she told me. I started to get angry. I knew what I was saying was true. That's when she looked at me with that twinkle in her eye and asked me to stand next to her. When I was by her side, she began, "Look at my tree and tell me what you see." I looked closely at the tree. There was nothing that looked like writing or dead branches anywhere. "Well, you're right," I said. "From here, I don't see the writing or I don't see the dead branches." It is important to listen to others and to accept that there may be many truths to one story. Tree-spirited woman then continued, "When people disagree, they fail to understand that both can be right. For every truth, there is an opposite truth. That is a way of life." "Well, what of people who intentionally tell lies?" I asked. "There will be some who intentionally hide the truth. These people are often afraid of what the truth may bring, or they may have the need to impress others by their stories. Unfortunately, these people have yet to learn that being not truthful makes many of their own life problems." Looking to my eyes, she continued, "Do not judge these people harshly. It is not one's place to cast judgment among another." Just then a deer ran through the woods, startling me. Tree-spirited woman slowly stood. She looked at me and she said, "It is my sign. The cider is gone and I am cold." She waited for me to get up, and I stepped off the tarp. I sensed her age and her fragility. "Do you need any help?" I asked. Shaking her head, she smiled and she said, "I have enjoyed this visit. I will see you next month." Then she watched as she leisurely stuffed the tarp into her large bag and walked away through the snowy, silent woods.
Thank you.
I understand why your books has sold 40,000 copies.
33,000, but and
How
at the
many?
end of each, there is a reflection. And after this one, I'm just going to read. it said January 4th. I had an interesting meeting with Tree Spirited Woman last week. We talked about truth. I never really thought about how there could be more than one truth for the same thing. She said, for each truth, there can be an opposite truth. I've been doing a lot of thinking about that. And just today, my sister told me about a situation. And for the first time, I could totally understand that for her, it was true. I didn't have to agree with her, and it was okay. I guess that also goes for those who have a different worldview than mine. Their belief is true to them as mine is true to me. Interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Very nice.
So, I mean, this lends the natural question is there another book? Because this came out a while ago, but it continues printing, and obviously you continue talking and reading from it, and it continues delivering. So, I don't know.
No,
Do you have another one?
no, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Uh, my It'll be 20 years in next year when it came out in 2006. I really didn't do much at that time in my life. We all have our other lives. And in my other life, at that time, I was president of a state organization. And I thought, you know, it's tacky to tell somebody you wrote a book. Plus, you've got to understand, I wasn't real good at blowing my own horn because I had a lot of, no, you just don't do that. Um, I'm, I'm just me. And so I really didn't do much. So next year is 2026 and it has done really well. And I think I'm going to just kind of push a little bit because it's only been in Minnesota. I've got a place in Colorado that has sold probably 700 copies, and I've got a couple of hot springs in Montana that it goes to. But other than that, it's in Minnesota. And I think I've had women tell me, and men, that it touches the heart and that it makes them feel good, that they can feel the presence. And that is what I think it's about. Um, I asked this, it won a 2025 International Book Award. And how I could do that is it had to be printed after a certain point, but I've had reprints, so they allowed me to submit it. And it won this award, and I'm talking to this other lawyer author that had written a book, and he said, okay, he read it, and I said, well, give a man's point of view. He said, I don't even think you need a man's point of view. I think it is just a point of view. Colleen, you're not understanding this. It is a book for all. And that was a heavy thing. That was not just a couple months ago. And it was like, wow, it's been out this long. And I've had gentlemen and guys tell me that it really touched them as they were going through a divorce or they were going through a loss of a loved one or whatever. Um, it's just my my counseling background comes through. I just I also want people to feel good, but I wanted to open up lines of communication. The questions in the back are very open-ended because it is my counseling background. And you've got to be able to discuss. It's not yes or no answers. It might, share stories of the relationship with your grandmother or someone you think is a grandmother figure. You know, listening is a gift. Explain why you agree with this statement. They are not closed off. They are open-ended. I had a woman, I was doing an event at this one place, and this woman goes, oh my God, you're the author of that book? I read that book, and my sister and my mother and my mother lives in New Mexico, and my sister's over here. We read your book, and we did a book club, and we answered the questions, and we wrote it out, and then we discussed it. She said, we loved your book. And that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
I
that's the dream to get that kind of
Yeah.
engagement and
Yeah.
conversation for sure.
That
Yeah.
is it. I presented at a group, a church group, and other book clubs, but this one in particular looked at me, and there were like 30 people there. She said, it was the shortest book we read, but the one we had the most conversation about. Everybody took chapters that they wanted to discuss why it meant something to them, why it didn't. Like I say, it was a gift, and I just get to share it. So,
That's wonderful. Um, We tend to end our conversations with kind of rapid fire lightning things, and we could obviously have this conversation much longer than that. But to kind of to reel us in and to reveal more kind of character about you, and I kind of have a hunch maybe about the answer to this one. But if you could spend a day with anyone living or dead, who would that be and why?
I'd like to spend a day with my grandmother as an adult because she was raised in the Indian boarding schools. She had to be taken out and then she went back, and she would just say to me, Colleen, it was not a good time, and she wouldn't talk about it. But now as an adult, I would like to just talk to grandma. And she believed in me. She believed I would do things you know, when when my mom would go off on her things, grandma would go. I don't know how she got like that. And that was my mom's mom. But grandma would be there. You know, I would love to spend a little time, even though I know she would love me and I don't ever remember her getting angry at me. Maybe she did, but I don't ever remember it. Um, I'd like to know more about the Native heritage. Um, Even though I am on the rolls of White Earth and I've been there, I would like to know more. And I guess I would like to talk to grandma.
That is kind
I
of my
think,
suspicion. But anyway,
yeah,
so
But
I think,
nobody's ever
I
asked me
think,
that question
I think
before. That is
I'd
the
like to
first
spend
time I've
an
ever
afternoon
been
with your
asked
grandma.
that. And I really just had to think for a moment, but not long. But that's the first time anybody's ever asked me.
I'm going to ask you one more. We've got to wrap this up because we've got another podcast coming up. But, and this is a question that is an odd question for most people, but I don't think it's going to be an odd question for you. If the sky wasn't blue, what color would you paint it?
My first was a vibrant yellow so that it would just glisten. But then I thought, I love the color of green that would just be like nature, all just encompassing all. I don't know. Can I do swirls?
You can do whatever you want.
yeah, it's your question. You
So
can do what you want with it.
it's
But
your artwork. It's
I
your
am going
artwork.
to do yellow with swirls of vibrant blue for the gift, but then also of green for planet Earth and Mother Earth, and then grandfather sky, but also for the light that everybody should just feel the joy and the love that embraces them because it's things.
I
What a
love it.
great way. What a great way to end our time together. Colleen, thank you ever so much for joining us. It
Thank
has
you. This has
been
been an enjoyable evening. So thank
it's
you, and guys, I'm just me.
well,
I'm not super fancy. This is me.
We
I,
appreciate you being just you, and we'll be sure to
yeah.
include links to your book down below. I guess last question is, do you have a favorite bookstore that we should be sure to mention if someone is in the area to go get one
Well,
in
Valley
Minnesota?
Bookseller, downtown Stillwater.
Okay.
I was thinking my book is out for 20 years, and I did my book launch at the winery. It's not there anymore, but it was like next to there. They don't know. I'm going to go down and talk to Gretchen, but she wasn't the owner originally. But I would say that bookstore has sold over 1,000 copies of my book. Um,
Well,
they just do that. The other place, I've I've learned my book really sells well in gift shops and resort areas. You have to find your niche for anybody that is out there being an author. Find your niche. It may not be bookstores. They are not necessarily the greatest. Where would your book sell? What is the topic? Where is it from? Mine sells very well in women's gift shops, women's boutiques. Kowalski's markets have been phenomenally well. Boutiques, gift shops. That's where my book sells. And but Valley Bookseller always has my book, always, and they've always carried it. They have continued to carry it, and I am very honored and blessed that they do.
Wonderful. Well, we'll be sure
terrific.
to give them a nudge down below so people can find it there. Thank you again so much for joining us this evening. It
Yeah.
was wonderful to meet you.
Well, it was wonderful to meet you. And thank you for doing this. I don't know who's in charge of this, all of it. And it was like, okay, is this something or do I do it? Do I not? And I thought, I'm going to trust. I let go and trust. My book is about letting go and trusting.
Yeah.
We're glad you did.
Colleen, we're somewhat similar to you because it's just us.
Yeah.
It's two pretty simple guys that just want writers to have an opportunity to get their books seen and heard by as many people as we can help do that. So that's why we're doing it.
Well, that's a gift you're giving to me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been a delightful half hour, 45 minutes. So thanks.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Nice
great
meeting
evening.
you.
Yep.
I hope our paths cross.
Me too. Thank
I
you.
hope so too. And don't forget, you can see this book and more from Minnesota authors in the Bell Cow catalog, heading to libraries and indie bookstores across Minnesota and beyond.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bell Cow Author Roundup podcast. We'll be back next Tuesday with another amazing Minnesota author.